Well, let's get into Class 1A. So the top seed, Leroy Panthers, get the win over the 12 seed Galena Pirates, 37-21. Mitch, I'll bring you in here. Give me the news and notes on this one, on another impressive win for Leroy. They are rolling along.
Yeah, literally rolling along. 64 rushes in this game, 0 passes for the Panthers. I mean, that's kind of their MO, right? This is a rushing team. Bo Zalesnik shined once again for Leroy, 139 yards on 28 carries, 3 touchdowns, also pulled an interception on defense. They got a couple more backs too. Stephen Williams had 76 yards and a touchdown. Jack Bogema had 51 yards and a touchdown. So, yeah, this I've got the number here. I'll jump to it now. They've rushed for 4,575 yards this season alone. That is,
Woo.
if you can believe it, the most in school history. So there is no doubt about what this Panther team is going to do. But man, Galena played close. The Pirates had trimmed the lead to 21-13 in the third quarter. It was a touchdown pass from Miles Schumacher to Braden Cavern. But the Panthers responded the way that they do right away. That pulled the game away for good following that. That was as close as it would get. So, for Galena, it was a superb season. I don't think a lot of us thought that they would end up in the 1A quarterfinals. Certainly had a lot of great performances in the regular season in that such tough conference. Roman Roma, really impressive all season, had 161 yards and a touchdown on Saturday. Miles Schumacher, fantastic year. He had a passing touchdown as well. Braden Cavern caught both of those scores. So again, just really impressive from Galena. I think this will be a team we'll talk about next year too, along with Stockton. So yeah, fun season.
So for the Leroy Panthers, it's their first semifinal appearance since 2015. But let's go to their matchup against Lena-Winslow here. The number 2 seed, the Lena-Winslow Panthers, get the win 40-7 over Gibson City Melvin Sibley. Panthers roll into the state semifinals for the 7th consecutive year. Incredible run they're on here. After taking the kickoff to begin the contest, Panther Jalen Orkowska actually fumbled the football on the second snap of the game, but he quickly redeems himself. The All-Stater gets less than 2 minutes later, picks off an errant Gibson City pass in the end zone. Then it's Alex Schlichting, another All-State speedster, runs for 70 yards for the touchdown. Aiden Wild also took one to the house. Then the route was on from there. Lena-Winslow led 32-0 at the half. They really just kind of salted this one away in the second half. Panthers score on every possession but one in the final half of action in this one. So really impressive effort. As we talked about, Aiden Wild had a great game, 153 yards, 3 touchdowns. Schlichting had 149 yards on the ground and scored twice. Just overall, Lena-Winslow, 367 yards of rushing offense in this game. So, boy, what do you think you're going to see in this one? Lena-Winslow going up against Leroy. Mitch, I'll start with you. This is the Mitch Stormer dream matchup here. Run.
You got it. I would be shocked if we saw a single pass in this one, but that also might be something that one of these teams is kind of tucking away as something they might need. But we saw this game coming, right? We tried not to predict too far in advance, but you could kind of see the writing on the wall that this is where things were headed. So, been super impressed with Leroy. A fantastic program. Looks like a great community up there. Kyle can speak to kind of his interactions with coach up there this season, but yeah, this should be a great game. Like I said, 4,575 yards rushing for Leroy, but they're not going to shock you with what they're doing. It's going to be Zalesnik for the most part, running that offense. So you know where this is going to go. And we've talked in the past, going back to last year, going back to years before, in wondering what it takes to beat Lena-Winslow, right? And I think we all kind of have settled on the idea that you have to beat Lena-Winslow at their own game, right? We saw Camp Point Central do that. Those were mirrors of each other, playing each other last year in the state title game. I don't think it's quite as similar this year, just with Leroy doing things a little bit differently. But it seems to me that if you take the Leroy out of it, right, and you just like look at this offense, it fits into something that Lena-Winslow is used to, accustomed to, and can stop. But then you add back in the Leroy factor of how good they are and how efficient they are. It makes it a little bit more interesting. So um, I I really am looking forward to this matchup. I think this will be a better semifinal than the one in the South. Maybe I could be wrong, but yeah, just the way that they dispatched GCMS here, I think. And I don't know if we'll get into predictions right now or not, but I like the momentum that Lewin has. Not again, this is their seventh straight semifinal. This could be their fifth consecutive 1A state title appearance. So it's one thing to say the momentum for them, but just like the way that they're playing on both sides of the ball, I think they'll be ready for Leroy. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. What I think the matchup that really intrigues me here is between the two head coaches. You got Rick Aaron, longtime head coach at Lena-Winslow. We don't need to, call out all his accolades. People know we've already talked about a lot of it here. But on the flip side, you got BJ Zalesnik leading Leroy. And Kyle, you've talked about texting back and forth with him, emailing back and forth with him this season. He's been around coaching Leroy since 2003. And obviously, his son is the quarterback, Bo. We just talked about that. His dad was the longtime head coach at Leroy. So it's really a family deal there at Leroy. Really cool, kind of story here that's playing out. I was really impressed listening to him talk on Third Lang with Matt Lang and Edgy Tim. Just really impressed with the way I don't know, just the way he carried himself, or the things he had to say. His respect for a lot of coaches around the area and the way he approaches the game of football, at the small school level. What do you think about your talks with Coach Zalesnik, and kind of what you think about the coaching matchup going into this one, Kyle?
Well, like you said, you got two long tenured coaches. One of the cool things too is so his father Jim won the only state title for Leroy back in 1996. That game was played on November 29th. This year, November 29th is the state championship game.
Oh boy, and it's their 125th year of football at Leroy, and they've been celebrating it all year. I tell you what, I said it a couple weeks ago on this podcast that something about Leroy feels a little bit like a team of destiny here. Like,
well, and that's what people are talking about. Fate has it one way, right? But fate also has a lot of history in the other side of the field with Lena-Winslow coming to town.
Absolutely.
And, I don't think that these two teams are. I think these guys have met up in the past, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to quickly find out. But as far as like Coach Zalesnik says, he's got a great group of seniors. He's got 18 seniors. He's never had a group like this. They're all about playing for each other, which is exactly what you want to do, right? And with that regard, you got to be able to, and I was wrong. These guys have not met up before. So that's interesting because we have seen Leroy come up here in the past, but obviously not against Lena-Winslow. He was able to beat Galena last week. And when he first took over in 2003, he got Leroy to the state championship game where they lost to Galena in Chuck Cordy's last game as head coach. So his first season as head coach, he gets to go up against a Hall of Famer in Chuck Cordy, loses an awesome state championship game in like double overtime. A nail biter of a game.
Yeah.
But here he is, has a great team in front of him. I mean, a team that everybody's been talking about all year. I mean, this is a team that was undefeated last year, too, as a junior dominated team, and then got uprooted by Althoff Catholic in the second round. This year, they get to come north, and as soon as like you guys were just talking about, as soon as the projections came out, we didn't want to project too far ahead, but we kind of knew where the train was running, and it ran us right here. And, like you said, he's got a couple playmakers there with Bo Zalesnik at quarterback, Stephon Williams at running back or fullback, Landon Welty's in there. Interesting too is a guy that I know who played quarterback for us in college is a coach and teacher at Leroy, Doug Hageman. So, and he's got ties to Salt Fork because that's actually where he went to high school at. It's where his dad and his brother coach at still. So it's kind of interesting because we've had Salt Fork come up here many times. There's also family connections with the Hagemans at AFC as well. So that's even into NUIC country.
Yep.
The history that Coach Zalesnik has with his dad combined, he just passed his dad's win total of 140 wins to set the new career mark at 141 wins, now 142, I believe. But I could be wrong. That could have been 141 this week.
No, that's right. I think it's 140. I think it's 142.
Okay. I knew I was I've seen so much stuff on Leroy here recently. It's like all coming together. But another cool thing about talking about this community is somebody reached out to me earlier this week already, or actually earlier this week. It's Monday.
Yeah.
I think it was either today or yesterday. And they're from Morrison originally, and they live down in Leroy. And they were talking about how great of a community it is. Talked to another individual who clearly was from the Lanark area, and she has lived in the Leroy community for 7 years now, and she is very excited about that community and how they do a great job of bringing everything together for all of the sports, not just football. And it's one of those things that you really enjoy about small school athletics, right? Yep. And Leroy kind of has that pride, and it's a healthy pride, and I'm really excited for this game, though. I already got invited by Byron Owens to stop up in the press box to see him when I get down there.
There you go.
His son's Brock Owens, who actually leads as the second leading tackler on the defense, right behind Bo Zalesnik. So shout out to Byron on that one. But yeah, I'm excited to make this trip down. I saw a picture of their line. I actually shared it with a buddy of mine. Their line is huge. I mean, they are just behemoths up front. I'm interested to see how that plays out going up against Lena-Winslow's line.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like Mitch had talked about, beating Lena-Winslow. Can you beat them at their own game? And I think that's where it starts, right? I mean, that's where we are impressed by, the highlights that come out of Schlichting and Rakalska and Aiden Wild. Well, how do those plays happen? Because they get that blast up front and they get that huge, those blocks, and they get that space. So I think that's where I look. And has Leroy seen a team like Lena-Winslow and what they're going to do? That's a matchup I'm looking at for sure. Mitch, what do you look at in this one? What stands out to you?
Yeah, I think it's like a broken record when you say that. Not you, we all say it. The game's going to be won in the trenches, right? But that's when you have two teams that are running the ball. It's whoever can control that line of scrimmage and create those holes. I don't want to suggest at all that Leroy is one dimensional, because I don't think that's true. But I wonder if what can they do if Lena-Winslow contains
Zalesnik.
I'm sorry. Yes. They've thrown the ball so little. They do have other players. There's no question that other guys can run the ball, but I don't think it's any doubt that offense runs through Bo. And so if Lewin can stop him, I would be interested to see where Leroy kind of pivots their game plan to, where Lena-Winslow maybe has better diversity in their offense, where you do have Alex Schlichting, or you have another game where it's Rakowska, or you have another game where it's Wild. So to me, I have a hard time betting against Lena-Winslow. I don't think this will be a 40-7 game like Lena-Winslow's quarterfinal was. Um, I don't know that there'll be that many possessions to even put up that many touchdowns, but you know, again, I'm not concerned. We've seen Lena play against bigger lines before, and they haven't had a whole lot of trouble with that. So I think that again, the style that what I mentioned at the start of this, the style of Leroy matches up with Lena-Winslow in a sense that they have seen it before 1,000 times and they know how to play it. Leroy has a good defense. There's no doubt about that. But I just think I'm going to roll with Lena-Winslow in this one to get to that state championship game once again.
Kyle, when you look at Zalesnik, he's I get the sense he's kind of a combination power and speed kind of back. Mitch, maybe you can answer that too, if you've seen some highlights or seen some game film.
Yeah, he definitely matches that role. I mean, he's definitely a physical player. I mean, on the defensive side of the ball, he plays linebacker. So
yeah, well, so that was my point, right? And he's kind of that blend of he can do a little bit of both. He can run right at you and power you through, or he can run past you, but you can run by you with speed too. But I think when you look at the Lena-Winslow side of things, do they have anybody? Do we think that Leroy has anybody that's as fast as Schlichting or Rakalska? That's where I think there's a little bit of a difference here.
And that answer is no, they do not.
Yeah. So I think that's where kind of my head goes, is that they have Aiden Wild as the power back, but you have some speed. And when they get to the edges, you saw it against Stockton. It was incredible. I mean, their breakaway speed is really impressive. So that's where I think a little bit of separation comes in this game for me. I think it's going to be a hard-fought battle. I was just looking back at the common opponent they have is obviously Galena. So we just talked about, Leroy got the pretty convincing 37-21 win. It was close into the third quarter before Leroy kind of ran away with it. In about the middle part of the season, Lena-Winslow got the 22-10 win. And remind me, Kyle, that game was pretty close throughout. I mean, obviously 12-point game, but it was close throughout. Galena had their chances in the second half in that one as well.
So Galena did a great job of stymieing the offense for Lena-Winslow on the defensive side of the ball. They were able to get some points put up. Offensively, though, they really could not do a whole lot against Lena's defense.
Yep.
But what they were able to do was, like I said, they stymied the offense in the first half. Some halftime adjustments took place, and then it was really a 22-3 second half. So, Lena-Winslow kind of woke up, realized, hey, we got a dogfight here. We better start playing some football or something. Really, they made the adjustment that they needed to make. And Galena, I mean, Coach Freed put a hell of a game plan together that game against Lena-Winslow. And to be quite honest, it's probably the footprint that you need to have in order to beat Lena-Winslow, much like what Camp Point Central did last year to the Panthers at State. And it's not easy, right? Because you know what Lena-Winslow is going to do. They'll tell you what they're going to do. But you have to beat them to that point of contact. And if you don't have the guys to win off the line of scrimmage and the guys to make it to the point of contact first, I'm sorry, you're just not going to win that head-to-head matchup. Yeah. And that's where it becomes really hard to beat Lena-Winslow. They are so disciplined, arguably the most disciplined team in Class 1A right now. And there's only one other team that you could probably even put in that same category, and that would be Camp Point Central. Yep. As far as, they don't commit a lot of penalties. They stick to their assignments. They don't go away from that. And that's where I feel Lena-Winslow is going to have the edge in this game. They have the experience under their belts. We just discussed it. They're playing at a much higher level now that the playoff lights have turned on. They're fast. They know how to take care of the ball. They don't hurt themselves.
Yep. I think that's a recipe for winning football, and it has been for a long time for them, but this year in particular, I think it's going to be a great atmosphere in Leroy. I think they're going to it's one of those, it seems like a perfect setting for that Class 1A state semifinal game. It's going to be great. I lean towards Lena-Winslow as well because of all the things that have been stated here. What's the Mitch? You got something?
I was just going to say, I think just if you look at just the 3 playoff games for each team, right? Lee Win has got off to fast starts. I think they've been up by 30 or close to 30 in the first half in each of their 3 games. Where you've seen Leroy in the game against Rockford Lutheran, and then again in their game against Galena. Both of those teams were kind of hanging around in the third quarter before Leroy. That offense is going to wear their opponents down. I think that Lee Win will not be as susceptible to that, right? I don't think they'll be worn down. So to both of those points, if Lee Win gets off to a 2-score lead in the first half, that's a hard thing to come back from when you run that run only offense, right? You're going to run out of time.
Yep.
But 2, I don't think Leroy can win this game the same way that they've won at least their past 2 games, where they're more so maybe running their opponents out of energy, because I don't think Lee Win's going to do that.
Yep. All right, Kyle, you got the projections? What's the projection say? Who's the favorite here?
Well, the favorite is Lena-Winslow, of course. They are a 8.5-point favorite in this game.
Okay. Interesting.
The Massey projections have it 42-24 in favor of Lena-Winslow.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like Mitch stated, Lena-Winslow got out to a 40-0 lead against GCMS, right into the third quarter there, got the running clock going. GCMS is a team that did play Leroy back in the regular season, lost that game 34-13. From what I was informed of, GCMS was down 3 starters in that game. Whether that would have made the difference in that game, I don't know. I'm being told that it would have. But in either case, Leroy won that game. Another big win that they had was the game over Tri-Valley in week 2, 41-14. Another game that we've mentioned in recent podcasts as well. And Tri-Valley was missing like 5 starters in that game due to whatever issues they had going on. Either way, I don't think it takes anything away from Leroy, because clearly they're a team that you have to be able to respect. I mean, they have the size, They have the playmakers, and they play good defense. So I'm on the same fence as Mitch. I could see this being a lower scoring game simply because you got 2 stalemate type offenses going up against each other. But as we've seen in years past, if you can get the speed to the edge and get holes open up the middle, you can score quickly, and Lena-Winslow is very good at doing that. Yeah. Will it become that easy against a team to Leroy stature? I don't think so. But I do think Lena-Winslow will win this game and get back to the state championship in Normal.
Yep. I think we're all on the same page there. It's going to be a great game. Lena-Winslow taking their 12-0 record on the road to Leroy, who's also sitting at 12-0. Saturday, 2:00 there in Leroy. Going to be a good one. Let's look quickly before we wrap up this episode here. The 1A semifinal in the south half of the bracket. Another, familiar matchup here. We thought it was very likely to happen again. It happens. Can Camp Point Central knock off Althoff Catholic for the second year in a row?
That's going to be tough. Althoff's entering this game as an 18.5-point favorite this time.
Wow. Yep.
So it's going to be very hard, I think, because this is not the same Camp Point Central team that we saw last year. But like I keep going back to, you're talking about a program that has been very disciplined. And what I've seen out of Althoff is, yes, they have playmakers all over the field. They're fast, they're effective, but they lack discipline. And you got 2, possibly 3 of the most relatively disciplined teams, and two of them actually have played Althoff last year, that know what it takes to beat them. And whether it happens or not, I don't know. Right now, Althoff's favored 35-21.
Okay. So Camp Point Central will be on. This is a different look this year. Last year, Althoff traveled to Camp Point Central. This year, it's Camp Point Central going on the road to Althoff. Again, that game also at Saturday at 2:00. Mitch, did you see the repost we had on our X account of head coach Brad Dixon on the sideline after I think as they were winning their game against their rival Calhoun? It is an awesome image that I believe came from Matt Shuckman and Muddy River Sports.
Yeah, I believe it did. Just the exuberance of getting that win.
It's amazing. It's an amazing photo.
And moving on, I think Coach Dixon made that his profile picture. He loved it. So,
yeah.
I think if Camp Point Central is going to have a puncher's chance, they have to establish the lead first.
Yep.
They have to sustain long drives. They have to keep the ball out of the hands of Althoff Catholic. I think they can do that. I think that Camp Point Central is disciplined enough to do that. We saw it last year, right? This is the team that knocked off Althoff. I'm sure they were a pretty big favorite that day too. And there were certainly some circumstances in that game that are very, very rare that Camp Point was able to pull off in terms of their special teams play. But just their offense, if they can control the ball, they're going to have a shot. Should be a fun game. And you got two really good semifinals here in 1A once again.
Let's call it out. I'm saying it again. Camp Point Central, Brad Dixon doing what most think is unthinkable. They're going to beat Althoff Catholic, the talent, the D1 talent that is Althoff Catholic, for the second year in a row. They're going to take them down.
Three Panthers in the semifinals. You don't see that too often.
Oh, there you go. That's the hard-hitting analysis that Mitch brings to the table.